The reason why so much money is pouring into equities is because the expectation is the Fed will not let this balloon pop. I don't think they can do it forever. Right now, it feels pretty good because it feels like everything's going up, but I am not banking on the fact that the Fed will continue to keep the ship afloat. And when it goes under, it is going to be brutal on a level that makes '08 look like a little blip in the market.
We have this like weird assumption in America that like he's a doctor, he's rich. Oh, he's an attorney, he's rich. But it doesn't mean that they haven't succumbed to these same money principles of, what the CFPs are out there telling them. As a matter of fact, I sat with a captain that's been beat into his brain that all he has to do is accumulate a whole bunch of money and everything's going to be fine. And maybe it will, but I don't like to live on maybes. This is the real stuff if you're open to it, man. This stuff has changed my world. All right, we're back. Immediately recorded after the end of the last one for time's sake. So not a whole lot to catch up on. Wearing the same clothes, ready to rock and roll. It was too long of an episode to keep as one. It would have ended up being like an hour and 40 something minutes per, I think. So we're just going to rock this out. But one thing that you asked what's new and that I didn't bring up before that I thought was cool was that my son on his first year hunting, hit like a buck of a lifetime. It was an 8-point, but it was a monster.
Yeah, you sent me that picture.
Now I have to manage expectations for him that like some men spend their whole lives and don't shoot one that big. You got it. The first time you pulled the trigger, aside from sighting in the new rifle you have, you hit like a lifetime buck.
Where did you go hunting?
Well, I took him to a buddy of mine's place, which is like a little bit northwest of the city. And I shot one there. He didn't. He had just gotten down out of the tree stand because his hands were so cold right whenever we had an opportunity. And then I was leaving on a trip. So he went with his uncles, probably inside 10 miles, 5 miles even. Yeah, less than 5 miles from where Flight 93 crashed. So Somerset County, Pennsylvania. That's where he got that big one. It was actually like right on my mother-in-law's property.
Nice. That's awesome.
That's cool. I wish I would have been there, but I'm glad he got it. He's hooked now.
I'm not going to say I'm hoping for a boy for our next kid. If we're blessed with a child, it'll be the right one. But I would be ecstatic to have a son. And I think doing stuff like that brings you back, it's invigorating.
You know what's cool is like, I had a little discussion about this too since, but I was thinking about it. You ever look at the body language of when a man and a woman talk, they still stand face to face? Do you ever just like stand like we're doing right now on a podcast, but of course we're 3,000, almost 3,000 miles away. When two dudes, like if you like go to a social function and watch the way that guys communicate, because if actually doing what we're doing is confrontational. So when guys bond, you ever like they turn, like they'll never stand like chest to chest and just have a conversation. Dudes will usually like turn, one will be to the side, one will be kind of next to him. It's just the way guys are. Men and women tend to bond on a face-to-face relation. Men and men bond shoulder to shoulder. And I was thinking about that. So like the bonding side of that, it's pretty cool that you can, like we were in a 2-person, the first time we went, when I got one, he didn't, we were up in a tree stand side by side, 2-person tree stand. And like, you're just sitting there not talking shoulder to shoulder for a couple hours in the freezing cold, maybe a little whisper here and there about something. That is actually incredible bonding time. Like going out in the woods before the sun comes up, watching the woods come alive, starting to hear things, the rustling, the moving, the birds, the deer start moving, a coyote ran past us, and you're just sitting there quietly shoulder to shoulder. But what's funny is that like as men, we don't need to have chatter to bond. And especially that's true with your boys. Like it's pretty cool that you could sit on a riverside and fish and not talk for an hour and walk away and have a core memory like your kid could. It's a really, really cool thing. So you got to do that kind of stuff, especially with boys. Like it's very different than girls. Girls want to have that social engagement. Dudes want to do things shoulder to shoulder.
Hopefully one day I'll be able to talk about hunting and fishing with my son. I haven't really hunted in a while. I think flight school was probably the last time, just from being in California, Massachusetts, and Japan for my entire Navy career. Even though I'm originally from Texas. And when I was at school in Georgia for college, my buddy had a property that, I don't know, a couple thousand acres, maybe an hour and a half east of Atlanta. And we'd go out there and they had this awesome barn with, all the 4-wheelers. They had this truck that they outfitted, built this cage on top of the truck, like a sitting area with swivel chairs mounted on the top, a refrigerator, strobe or spotlights and gun racks and everything in the bed of the truck underneath this structure on the top there. You'd have like a cage for dogs, you'd have all your tools and stuff like that. And so we would just rotate around. Someone's driving, we're just driving around shooting guns. Hogs are a huge problem. You can kill hogs all year round, no tags. Like the more you get, the better, just because they're a pest on the land. And we had a hog trap that's this pin, and we would take our hog stickers, like big old Bowie knives, and go. I don't get too graphic on them, but we basically go in, wrestle, and kill the pig, and it was a good time. I miss those days. I feel like I haven't done anything like that, like jumping in with the wild hog, killing it with a knife, driving around.
That's a little bit primal.
It was a blast.
And those hogs are mean, man. If they get you, they'll tear you up.
Yeah, I'm not saying this was a smart thing to do. That was the same period of my life where I worked at a ranch in the summer and out in Colorado, and was teaching kids Western riding, and we'd do pack trips and stuff. So it's kind of like a trail guide, riding instructor, stuff like that. But they would also have these horses that would, if they're getting a new horse or something and they just want to break the horse, you got a bunch of 20-year-old dudes. And so we'd all just get up there and to get bucked off. And, doing that now, I think getting bucked off one time right now on a horse you're trying to break would put me out of commission for a week. You just fall on your shoulder wrong. You're just taking a hit like that.
A few years ago, I sneezed real hard and I like threw out my back a little bit. But it hurt for like 3 days. So
it sounds like you could get a 100% disability claim, get those plates, and take all those mom's parking spots at Home Depot and national parks.
I need that.
But yeah, anyways,
I've got about 35 minutes now until I've got something coming up at 2 p.m. my time. So let's hop into the second part of the discussion. That's funny how we just got off on a tangent again, and we literally finished that recording, a minute before we started this one. So here we are back on another tangent. Stock market as the foundation to finish, for part 3 of this savings investing speculation 3-episode discussion. So stock market as the foundation in the CFP model, or whatever financial planner you talk to, or the standard model, or if you go to Dave Ramsey, or if you look up online how to plan for retirement, do a Google search, and the top 10 things will all tell you the same basic model, and every one of them rides on the stock market as the foundation of everything you should do to plan for retirement.
Yeah, we talk all the time about protect, save, grow being the proper order of operations, because what does a huge nest egg, a huge pile of cash matter if you get sued in a car accident that you're determined to be at fault for? Would that nest egg survive a $2 million lawsuit? And if you don't know the answer to which of your assets are protected there, you are not focusing enough on the protection component. And so we talk about protect, save, grow when we're talking about the stock market as the foundation. Again, it's not that the stock market's bad. It's not that you shouldn't have, investment assets exposed to market risk in order to get outsized gains, et cetera, price the risk, all that stuff. It's just the very first starting place is the grow component. That's 90% of your conversation, is how are we going to grow this in the market? That is not financial strategy. That is speculation. If you want to go back to our previous episode, it might not be speculation for everyone because they are pricing the risk and understanding the investment. But either way, it's not a sound strategy because it's built on a shallow foundation.
And let's actually talk about that real briefly. Like you were talking about we do protect, save, grow. Well, what are some things that could go wrong? So all of this, remember, circles back to the standard retirement model that we beat to death in the last episode, retiring at 65. Well, you're 36, I'm 43. And so let's just take somebody that's 21 all the way up, 22 years old, getting out of college, or maybe they're 18 and starting their career, their life, and they're going to go all the way to 65 and do the standard model. What are some things that could go wrong? When you do that, you're on a wealth curve. Sorry, I'm like jumping around, but ideas are coming to me. You're on this wealth curve. So wealth, it grows over time, right? It's this parabolic curve that gets really steep at the end. And that steep point, in theory, is when you're ready to retire at age 65. But if you interrupt that, because that curve is always projected as the way your money's going to grow in a compounding way. But as we've talked about in prior episodes, and as we know, most things don't compound constantly in an uninterrupted fashion. And every time you interrupt that compounding, it changes the end result. So what are some things in life? And I'm not even, you could tie some money into it, but what are some things in life that could interrupt that growth curve?
Yeah. So one thing I just mentioned, you get in a car wreck, you're at fault, and you get sued. There's a lawsuit at least every minute in America that's filed. If you're on the wrong end of that, That's going to disrupt that curve, especially a brokerage account is going to be taxed. Disability, well, if you're not able to keep working, contributing to that plan, putting the money in there, because all those plans assume constantly feeding the system, which you should do. That is a good thing. That you don't want to just put something in and just hope that it compounds forever, because the projections will make it look good, but reality is going to tell a different tale. But you want to continue to feed that machine that you're building. But what if you can't? What is your investment product self-completing in that?
And I think episode 17, the 3 forms of economic death, we talk about that a lot, the disability side of it. So visit that if you haven't gone back, and you'll see what a disability can do to your income projection. But can you just rattle off a few more things that could interrupt that wealth curve?
I mean, the market going down, if that's the basis of your strategy, the market going down is going to compound negatively until it doesn't. And that's just something that you definitely cannot know. Fees, death is a big one. Yeah.
We're thinking generationally, and we like people to think generationally. Your death destroys the wealth curve if you haven't protected. The 3Ds are death, disability, and the one that crushes people that nobody hopes for, but over 50% of people experience: divorce. So marry yourself a good woman if you're a man, and vice versa. But you see how that destroys wealth. So there's all these things that can go wrong. You mentioned lawsuits, disability, car wreck, death, disability, divorce, market interruptions, market drops. The same rhetorical questions you put out at the end of the last episode. How many of those things have to go right for that wealth curve to exist and to follow the trajectory you're hoping it does?
Yeah, all of them.
How many of those, we named about 7 or 8 there, I'm guessing, I don't know. How many of those have to go wrong to interrupt that wealth curve? Just one. So if you haven't protected first, one thing in your life has to go wrong to destroy this entire model that we're talking about here today. And this whole thing rides on the stock market. Back to that.
You have your stocks so that you get aggressive. You have low exposure or no exposure to bonds, which are your safe assets when you're younger, because you have a longer risk tolerance. Everyone knows exactly what I'm like. Everyone's heard this before over and over. This is not new. And again, we're all given the same playbook, which should make you a little bit suspect. And then as you get older, you change the ratio of your stocks to bonds because bonds are safer. You want less volatility. Stocks have more volatility. So you're going to change that ratio. You have your 60-40 portfolio. And then when you're in retirement, you're going to be mostly in bonds with a little bit of exposure to the market to get those gains. You have your target date funds that are going to say, if you were going to retire in 2040 or 2050, again, a 10-year time period, when we're talking about the inflation and the money creation that we are experiencing, I don't like that assumption personally, that we're going to tie it to a round number of 10 years for these target date funds. We're going to pay out the ass and fees on this. But just the premise of this, again, let's go back to predict the future. What's the market going to do? We don't know. Number 2, the stock market is the foundation of everything. That assumption is always that as stocks go up, bonds go down. As bonds go up, stocks go down. That's a pivotal foundational tenet of this idea of the market portfolio, the quote diversified market portfolio, where bonds go up inversely with stocks. But what if that doesn't happen? Has that happened in our lifetime? Yes. Has that happened since I've known you? Yes. Bonds and stocks moving in sync because the fundamentals, the macroeconomic underpinnings of our economy are totally off the rails right now. Yes, the stock market is soaring currently. It's not based on value creation, in my opinion. If you look at the macroeconomic, the monetary policy, what's going into this, we had a period in the last 5 years with zero fractional reserve requirement. We had unlimited ability to print money. We have thrown a fire hose of gasoline onto a forest fire. We're just spraying it with gasoline right now. Yes, the stock market, your portfolio is booming because of that. That is true. That's not deniable. But that does not mean that the actual production of our economy is not in the toilet. It is. And so just these assumptions that stocks up, bonds down, then as you get older, bonds up, stocks down, whatever, you're going to, these are assumptions made on sand. They've acted counter to this common wisdom in the last couple of years.
I want to ask a question, yes or no. Did that work pretty well in the time period when the boomers built their wealth?
Yes.
Yes. So once again, it's like one of those 20th century constructs that everybody needs to be questioning, but it has become the mainstream narrative.
We've seen in the last 5 years that the stance of the Fed right now is, and what investors expect, and the reason why so much money is pouring into equities is because the expectation is the Fed will not let this balloon pop. No matter how bad things get, literally shut down the entire global economy over the flu. Preposterous policy decision that can only be ascribed to malintent and underlying motives, nothing to do with the quote virus, shut down the world economy and still papered over it and continued blowing up the balloon and saying, no matter what happens, we will not let this thing pop. We will not pull the rug out from under you, stock market investors. We are not going to let this ship sink. Even though the ship is leaking water, we are going to continue this quantitative easing is a new thing. You're not going to look back in your old economics textbooks, not that people have them, but I got a couple back there from grad school days. You're not going to find quantitative easing in textbooks older than like 15, 20 years old. That's a new thing. The sentiment that's being given right now is that we are going to keep this ship afloat at all costs. I don't think they can do it forever. It seems like right now it feels pretty good because it feels like everything's going up. But I am not banking on the fact that the Fed will continue to be able to keep the ship afloat. And when it goes under, when the rug gets pulled, it is going to be brutal on a level that makes '08 look like a little blip in the market, in my opinion. But again, it's not necessarily stocks that are going to feel that. Maybe it might, but like there's just so much uncertainty in the macroeconomic environment that I am not going to pin my hopes on a CFP's growth only strategy.
All right, I've got a tangent.
Sorry, that was
no. That's fine. It's fine. I've got a tangent because of something you said there that just triggered something I was thinking of that's funny to me, and our audience will be okay with this. But maybe we should start a podcast that doesn't talk about money for all this side stuff we want to talk about. Just joking. So last week, 10 days ago or so, the COVID Special Commission put out its 500 some page report, which I of course didn't read because I don't have that kind of time in my life right now, but what it basically found, just because you talked about the lockdown for the flu and that they're more willing to lock down the country and there's some nefarious malintent, who knows what, who knows why. We haven't got to the origins of that. I think we do know, but beyond the scope of what I want to point out here. So that 2 years they studied this and found that basically everybody that was once called a grandma hating right-wing extremist or conspiracy theorist or whatever thing they tried to frame and make you look bad was found to be true. Right? So this whole publication of 800 pages goes through and says, likely came from a gain-of-function lab. Social distancing had no science behind it. 6 feet was fake. Masks did nothing. The lockdowns didn't help. New York basically murdered people. The travel restrictions didn't save lives. COVID-19 misinformation by the mainstream media was real. What else did it come out? I read the blurbs and some more highlights before, but I can't remember everything. Oh, the vaccine, of course, which is central to even our relationship, didn't stop transmission, didn't stop you from getting the virus, didn't stop you from spreading the virus. And actually, it didn't say this, but as we know, it damaged a lot of people. So all of these things, I'm just thinking this is the same government who, again, we're in their system in a 401k. What I didn't read about this report that blows my mind is they've said, hey, we mismanaged everything when it came to COVID, but not one thing that I find about it where they said, maybe the government shouldn't fricking manage it. All they said is we have to do it different next time. No, you shouldn't do it at all. There should have never been any of this that existed because everything this government does fucks something up.
I secede the state of New Hampshire. There will not be a National Institute of Health. There will not be a board of public health. We will restrict the monarchy of New Hampshire.
First, you need to move there.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
But yeah, but I just started thinking about that because you mentioned like they are so willing to manipulate our money supply to all measures. Like nothing they're doing is good. And then you mentioned like the lockdown and made me think about that stupid commission report that came out. Like we didn't need 2 years for you to tell us the government did it all wrong, but the government still should be the one in charge. It's absolutely crazy. Just like a 401k. So it can always be tied back in here. The 401k is the government's plan. Do you think they're doing it right?
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Sorry. I just
good tie back there.
Yeah.
We talk often about we're not just exclusively dogging on 401ks. We say that, but at the end of the day, what it is a tax advantage. That's it. That if we're talking about the positives here, that is the one positive is it is tax advantaged. It can be.
Maybe.
Right.
Depends on the
And it,
taxes in the future. Yeah.
but we're being as generous as we can. It's just market exposure. It's your brokerage account with some tax advantages. Like that is not something to be celebrated like it is. It is, yeah, I want tax advantages. I'm doing real estate right now. I'm about to close on a triplex for tax purposes, primarily trying to close by the end of the year. Like, yeah, we're all playing the tax game, but just getting tax advantages is not a win. You're just clawing back a little bit of your own capital, So just this, yeah, we're going to really struggling to keep it on topic here. But yeah, so everything rises in the stock market and then you hedge with bonds. The bonds go up and the stocks go down. Even sometimes they don't. What if they don't when your stocks go down and you're all in bonds now and you're expecting the bonds to maintain some stability because you're now in those drawdown years and bonds go down with stocks? Are you going to last? Who knows? It's just all of this uncertainty baked into the cake. So one strategy that we're taught is to just pour money into stocks without regard for their price or value. What's another word for that?
Dollar cost averaging. And that strategy can be okay. It's not always a bad thing. It's just that who's the benefactor most of the time of that strategy? Because you do buy some dips. Like there's a little bit of that I can get behind. Like if you're going to play the stock market game and you consistently purchase this thing and you buy sometimes when it's down, sometimes when it's up, like you can't time that because we can't predict what the future is going to do. And since so many of these stocks don't have anything to do with the value that the company's creating, it's a way to buy some of those dips systematically. But you're also systematically going to be buying at highs. And one of the things we talk about, the 4 things they want us to do, one of the 4 is they want us to systematically put our money into their products. So who's the obvious benefactor?
Whoever's sitting on that capital for a long period of time, decades and decades. But again, that idea, like you nailed it. It is not necessarily a bad idea if you have no strategy, no underlying understanding of what's going on. And again, that's playing the numbers. That has nothing to do with the company. You're not researching the fundamentals, the value, the balance sheet of this company. You're not taking all of these companies that make up this index and evaluating their strength. Are they overvalued? Like, you're doing none of that. You're solely trying to take dollars and turn them into more dollars based on the dollar price with the underlying assumption that time in the market is better than timing the market, right? You hear that all the time. But what fundamental assumption does the dollar cost average idea have to presume in order to be correct? It's that the market will go up, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay. I'm with you there.
if
Okay.
you did not know that the market was going to go up in the long run, would dollar cost averaging make sense? No, it only makes sense if you have this underlying assumption that it cannot go down over the long run. And again, you've been right for a long time. Are you willing to take your one shot at living the life you want to live down the road when you get to those years where you're not actively pursuing, your current job, whatever, like we talk about the retirement, but if you are going for that retirement age, and again, these plans always assume retirement at 65, you get one shot at 65. You don't get to go back and start over. So are you going to pin your one shot on that because the market has gone up recently because of the Fed action? Well, if you're dollar cost averaging, you're saying that I can't time the market, but it is going to go up. I know that it's going to go up in the long run, and therefore I don't really care when I get in because I'm just getting in and I'm picking dollar prices that are totally independent of the companies. I mean, it's a tactic. It's not part of a strategy in my mind. It has too many assumptions. It has too many things that could go wrong to derail it. And again, the fact that the market has continued to go up and the Fed has kept this course of saying we will not let the ship sink, to me, is not comforting enough to make the assumption that the market will always go up. And so I just don't think that dollar cost averaging, I know there's no economic studies behind it. At least
No,
with
there aren't.
the
Yep.
withdrawal strategy, you could point to the 4% rule, which I think has been not debunked, but altered pretty significantly because it has not survived. The way that it's framed to people, it no longer applies. It has to be altered. But dollar cost averaging, there are no studies you can point to. It literally is just a marketing term, and it can work if the assumption is that the market will go up in the long term. You have to make that assumption.
Yeah. No, it always has, but I just don't trust the way it works and the reason it's going up right now. Benjamin Graham's model of value-based investing was probably the best model because he was choosing companies based on the value they create and the value the company had within in order to invest. But he's long dead. And the way that the institutions are trying to get us to invest in Wall Street is not following his model. It's following dollar signs, and it's just following trends that are based on assumptions.
And that's why the growth is the third component in the order of operations for us. It's not the very first one. You don't put all your hopes on the fact that because the market has gone up, it will continue to. We grow, we invest, we do all those things, but that is the third order effect, not your starting point.
Keep playing to win. The foundation that it's built on has absolutely zero guarantees. We like to build our foundation on a savings foundation. We protect first, we save second, and in that savings, guarantees are baked right into, and the product we use, which everybody knows for the infinite banking concept, is guaranteed, or excuse me, whole life insurance from a mutual company that has guarantees, certainty, efficiency, and a whole host of other things that we've talked about in prior episodes. So saving there gives us the guarantees, and that's what we want to build our foundation on. It protects, it saves, and it does a whole bunch of other things all at the same time. So we like to build a stronger foundation than one that has zero guarantees and is based purely on a whole bunch of assumptions for the most part for most people.
If your bond allocation in your overall financial picture is your point of safety and diversification and hedge, that is not protection. That is not savings. That is still growth, and it's still something that you likely don't understand. But for most people, that's the safety net, the foundation of their portfolio. If the market goes off the rail, at least my bonds will keep my ship afloat like that.
And if that's the case for you and you're relying on bonds for that aspect because you believe that that's what it's providing for you, give us a call and we will run a separate framework within our model that will show, like, hey, what if we take the money you're putting in the bonds, say you're doing a 60-40 portfolio at your age, 40% going into bonds that are supposed to provide you that security, that guarantee and everything. And we shift it into this asset where we believe we can optimally save our money in a place that has actual contractual guarantees and builds contractual wealth, not statement wealth. And we shifted it there and show you how that performs alongside the same 60%. If you kept doing 60% in the stocks for what you want to, put your risky money into, it will likely outdo in your entire economic model. You will be in a better position than you were in bonds. I say that with a lot of faith and strength in the statement. So, whole life insurance built properly, positioned properly in your economic model will raise the tide of every other economic product you have and every other move you make. And a bond will not do that. Anyway, all right. So point number 3 there in the model, in the standard financial planning model, is build a retirement nest egg, also known as accumulation. So we're to build this pile of money, and then what? And I asked that question. As a matter of fact, I sat with a captain on one of my trips a few weeks ago with the airline, and we were talking about a whole bunch of stuff. And I don't really bring it up unless they just ask or if I'm doing something or it comes into the conversation. But we talked a little bit about the business, and he went off the rails as far as being like conventional minded, which was okay. But I asked him this exact question. He was talking about, the money he has in his 401k, which is very generous. The airline industry is very generous to pilots in the 401k. So he has a very large 401k balance. Told me his age, what's going on, the stuff with, his family and his plans, and what he plans to retire with, and why he's working more to max out that 401k. And I asked him, do you have a plan to draw from that? This guy was in his 50s, probably about 53 or 54. He's 10 years out from retirement. Do you have a plan to draw from that accumulated pile of dollars in your 401k based on what you think it's going to be? He said, nope. And I'm not worried about it because there will be enough in there. So now, that takes us back to the last episode. But my point is, this is a very intelligent man who's making a very high W-2 income and has a very high 401k balance. And he's living his life on all of the assumptions we talked about in the last one. And why is he living his life on all those assumptions? Because it's been beat into his brain that all he has to do is accumulate a whole bunch of money and everything's going to be fine. And maybe it will. but I don't like to live on maybes.
Yeah, and I've said this before on the podcast, and it's something that I was a mind. It was as my mindset shifted on a lot of these concepts, and you start seeing the power of having contractual guarantees that we have and that we help our clients put in place as the foundation. You see the literature and you see these talking points, and they start to stand out and ring a little differently when you evaluate them through this lens. And so when you said what that captain said, my first thought, again, besides the fact that none of these questions have even been addressed, I'm confident of that. And he even admitted it. No, I've never even thought through that. Never thought. How do you? Okay, had COVID not happened, I wouldn't have thought through it either. I would be 15 or 16 years into a 20-year career, and then I'm gonna like I would be. I get it. I fully get it. But now it blows my mind. I look back, like I only had my SGLI, $400,000 to protect my family for 12 years of my career. That's mind blowing, but I never thought of it. I never asked these questions about what if, how many things have to go wrong. That's mind blowing, but now it's all I focus on. And so, but what stood out to me is no, I've never thought about it because there will be enough. Well, okay, you don't get to say definitive adverbs like that. You don't get to say there will be enough. I get to say what my balance will be. I get to look at a contract and say contractually guaranteed this amount will be here, and I will have the right legally to do this. I can use words like will and for, like,
Guaranteed.
yeah, guarantee. Like, you don't get certainty, you get speculation. Or a correct answer, and it's not the correct answer, but his answer corrected to be a bit more accurate would be no, I haven't thought about that, but I'm not worried because there is a good chance that it might be there. It might survive. But again, zero due diligence done to get there. It's like, to me, that is like making an offer and signing a contract to purchase a house that you looked at on Redfin one time.
But you know what? It's okay because, like you said, I mean, I was probably there. I don't know how many years ago now. I've been doing this for a while, but I was always kind of skeptical of the standard model. You've been at this way of thinking for, heck, we first communicated in early 2022, probably, like, privately. So we met on the boards, just in public comments where we met in 2021. So 3 years, you've shifted your thinking. So it's actually great because people need to hear this, and I want to help people get out of that mindset. Like, he didn't want to hear me whenever I, would ask a few questions. He just kind of like dismissed it. So I'm not in the convincing business. I'm not going to spend time trying to convince you to think differently. But if you're open to it, man, this stuff has changed my world. How about you?
Absolutely. It's I have assurances in place. Like, I can say will, I can say with certainty, it's amazing. And I know that I have a self-completing system where I'm not subject to all these what ifs. I've got guardrails in place, and that guy has a larger net worth and nest egg than me. I'm positive of that. He's got more money than I do. I'm positive of that. But I can go through everything we've talked about here and say, what if, what if, what if, what if this goes wrong? And I feel comfortable against most, if not all of those possible what ifs. And the ones that aren't certainties that I've put in place, I am mitigating against, and I've thought through it. If you are in that captain's position and you think through these questions and you come to the same conclusion as him, that's fine. It's your own family's personal economy. But a lot of these things, if you haven't thought through, you're making that decision for your family without their input.
And so if you're listening to this, and we're talking about a very high income earner, but that's an important point. If you're listening to this and you're making the median income in America, you can actually position yourself better than, we have this like weird assumption in America that, like, oh, he's a doctor, he's rich. Oh, he's an attorney, he's rich. Oh, he's an airline captain, he's rich. Or, so now what that means is they're very intelligent, and that means that they're very dedicated to a craft, and that means they have the ability to, really succeed and power through some really challenging obstacles to achieve what they want. But it doesn't mean that they haven't succumbed to these same money principles of, what the CFPs are out there telling them as everybody else. And everybody can put themselves in a better position than you're already in by starting to understand things like certainty, guarantees, protection, savings, growth. Like you just said, you know he probably has a higher net worth than you, but you are going to have a much more peaceful, I'm not even going to say retirement, the word almost came out of my mouth, peaceful last phase of life. And you know that your children, your two children, are going to have a much more peaceful transition financially when it's time for you to walk off this earth. You know, that those are some cool things. And if you're making $40,000 a year out there right now, that can be you too. Like, you know, you don't have to have some crazy massive net worth to make this stuff happen. And a lot of people we talk to, because we're both pilots, you know, naturally we know a lot of pilots, and we know a lot of people getting into the airlines. We know a lot of people making big incomes, and they need this. But everybody needs this. Man, you could do some powerful stuff if you're 22 years old and get these principles. Like when you're 70, you're going to be, I mean, by the time you're 35, you're going to be in a powerful position. This is the real stuff, figuring out guarantees, figuring out certainty, figuring out contracts. Man, I hope you're listening.
Yeah.
So that's the goal, is to just, you know, and the standard CFP model or the standard financial planning model is just build this big income to live off of for an unknown amount of time. Don't touch the principal, live on the interest. A lot of the things we talked about in the last episode. And the way they do that is they want to find your number, because they don't understand in the standard model, or if you Google, you know, how to retire financially, they don't understand that money is not math. Like I said in the past, and math is not money. There's eroding factors on money. It doesn't always grow the way it is. There's all kinds of disrupting movements that can happen, and life events that, if you're not protected, can destroy it. So what's your number, Hans?
There's no answer to that.
7.
Yeah.
7-minute abs, 6-minute abs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I hope we've at least convinced you to start thinking through some of this stuff and stress test your strategy. You know, if you can't answer some of these questions, you owe it to your family to do so, and we'll help you.
Cool, brother. I'll talk to you soon. Give
All
us
right,
a call.
man.
Remnantfinance.com.
See ya.
Click the link. See you.